Hey y'all, this is Ivana with AL.com, back again for Friday of our second week of working from home. And today I am joined by our education reporter, Trish Crain. And there was a big announcement yesterday. If you missed it, Governor Kay Ivey and the state superintendent, Eric Mackey, announced that all Alabama public schools will be closed for the rest of the academic year. Not the calendar year, but the academic year. So the rest of this school year. And I know y'all have a lot of questions about that. We have a lot of questions about that. So I've got Trish here to talk about what we know and to tell y'all what we don't know and what we're working to get answers for. So Trish, kind of give us an idea of what's happening, when it's happening, and how that's going to work before we get into some of these questions.
Okay, so first of all, hello everyone. I know this is a tough time. I think parents are kind of struggling through this, as are teachers, but so I'll tell you what I know. Beginning April 6th, we are going to have school again, and school will resume. Now, I'll say that there are some districts in the southern part of Alabama that are on spring break, so they're not going to resume until they get back April 13th. But for most of us, on April 6th, school will come back on April 6th. So, the what? Like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I expected to do? Like, what is my child going to do? We don't have that plan yet. Superintendents were told this morning, State Superintendent Eric Mackey had a call with superintendents to say, we want your plans in by April 3rd. So school superintendents and district officials and school officials are being given a week to put their plans together. And that's important to know that it's kind of a wait and see right now. So even your school officials are not going to have a lot of information. And then there's the how. Like, how am I supposed to do this? I'm not a trained teacher. I may not even have an internet connection. Those are also challenges that we don't have answers to. I think that, the supposition is that those districts who do have online capability, those schools, will move on with that. But those schools that don't, we're going to go old-fashioned with printed out worksheets and that kind of a material.
And it's important to note that all the public school systems with superintendents will be coming up with their own plan.
Oh, that's very true. There's some basic things that Dr. Mackey, the state superintendent, has asked for, but what he's really asked for, and I think this is key in understanding, like, what is this going to look like? Am I going to have school from 8 to 3 every day? That doesn't sound like that's going to happen. I can't make you any promises, but I know that what he has said is, let's boil it down to those core essential principles that students need in order to get to the next grade. Okay, so he's asked them to be very specific about it, to really boil it down. He wants to do some enrichment activities too, but to make sure that those components, those really, really important core components, because, let's say second grade is where you learn, I don't even know. Let's go third grade with multiplication facts, right? So if you haven't finished that, let's remember we're towards the end of the year. So it could be you've already covered a lot of that stuff, but
right.
If you haven't finished it, that's what you need to do.
I think second grade was cursive for me. I don't know if they still teach cursive, but that was my second grade struggle.
Oh, that's such a bigger story. But yes, cursive is required in Alabama schools, and it must be taught by the third grade. That is correct.
Okay. Well, so those are the kind of things that they will probably finish wrapping up the year with, just those essential things.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for that kind of intro to everything we're going to be talking about. Another quick thing I wanted you to explain before we get into these questions is private schools. I went to a private school. I know a lot of people whose children do go to private schools. So what is the deal with them regarding this announcement yesterday?
Okay, so the health officer has control over the school buildings, right? And school buildings are closed through April 3rd, perhaps. I think that may have changed this morning. But so private schools are not regulated by the State Department of Education. So everything I'm about to tell you only has to do with the public schools, K-12 public schools. For private schools, I know that the Catholic schools, they sort of have a central authority in the Mobile Diocese. Birmingham serves North Alabama. So your best bet is to go to them and ask them what their plan is.
So if you are looking for answers regarding private schools, we don't have a lot of those for y'all. Today we're going to be talking more about Alabama's public schools. We just wanted to go ahead and get that out there before people start commenting and saying, well, that's not happening for my school. So we're just
Right,
trying to get
right.
y'all the information right now on public schools. We're going to work to get all the private school information and other things we don't know as we can.
Okay.
So first thing is first. Now, if I look down, I'm looking at my phone for questions, looking at my paper for questions.
I'm looking at it.
Y'all excuse me. But first and foremost, we'll go ahead and get this out of the way because there's a lot of people wondering about internet access. There's a lot of places across Alabama that do not have reliable internet access, that
Right.
homes do not have internet access. And if you normally go to the library to get your internet, you can't do that right now. Those places are closed. Right. So what is the plan for the internet access situation, and who do people need to talk to if that's what their questions are about?
Okay, so I wish I had a great answer to give you. We do know, I think I wrote a story earlier this week, showing there are large swaths of Alabama that don't have a reliable and fast enough sort of internet connection, right, to really do like what we're doing back and forth. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to hamper any sort of instruction, teacher to student instruction. I know that some districts are ready. Some districts already have, all the kids have their devices. I know one local school district passed out Chromebooks on Saturday. They're going to be ready to go. This is in an affluent district, so parents have internet connections. There are going to be places where there is no fixed internet. The only place the internet exists is at the school, right? I don't know what they're going to do, but it's sort of a wait and see. And I hate to say that because I know that it causes anxiety. But from what I could tell, I listened in on this call to superintendents this morning. Everybody understands this is a very unique and unprecedented situation. So nobody wants to punish kids because of the lack of access, right? Everybody, teachers particularly, they're trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that is going to help kids. So internet access, you need to be talking with your school or your school district. Social media pages are great. I mean, I can see people that don't even use social media usually. They're using social media. So, be in touch. Know where to go to get your information.
And I think advice from us in the media dealing with that a lot. Make sure if you are going to those social media pages to get information, you go to the verified page for your district, or you go to the principal or the superintendent's page. Make sure you're getting that information from a reliable page. So thanks, Trish, for that. A lot of questions about that. We can go ahead and just cross that one off with saying we don't know a lot of things right now. We're working to get on it. Trish is working to get on it, and we will get that to you on AL.com on here as soon as we know more. But a good question that I thought was funny, because so many people right now are using services like Zoom or other services to do online meetings. I know one of my best friends, I just saw tweeted that her kindergartner, they're doing a kindergarten graduation through Zoom. So
love that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think that those kind of services are very important right now for classes. But one of our Facebook commenters said, are schools looking at using online classes with services like Zoom, or are we discussing work on things like Google Classroom?
Yes to all of the above. I think that, again, some schools are using things like Remind and Dojo, Class Dojo. There are a lot of different tools that people are using, that schools are using some of them have more experience than others, right? So it's sort of like what it's done is capture this moment in time of where we are on this learning curve about technology. And because we don't have great internet access all over the state, and I don't know many states that do, right? Everybody's got those gaps in coverage. So I think that it's going to be up to your school district, how they want to deliver this instruction. And again, some of it is going to be instructional packets printed out on paper and delivered maybe even by school bus, right? So that is all. School districts have a week to get this information together and get it to parents.
Not much time.
No, but really, realistically, I think a lot of folks figured we might not go back to school. One thing I want to hit, if it's okay with you, a lot of people have talked about seniors, and that sort of, it clutches at everybody, clutches their heart to go, oh no, this was, my child's senior year. I talked with a mom yesterday whose child was going to graduate from the 5th grade, right, and move from one school to the next, and won't get to say goodbye to their friends, and, that kind of thing. So I can tell you that these high-level education officials, they feel it, like they know it. It hurts them. Teachers are saying things on social media. They know that these ceremonies and these, markings in time are really important. And Dr. Mackey said, don't give up. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what June's going to look like. We don't know what July is going to look like. And he encouraged superintendents to keep open to the idea that even if you can't do graduation ceremonies in May, maybe you can bring kids back in June and July. I mean, again, no one knows what the future holds, but he did encourage them to hold that open. Also, something that he said, because I think he is getting a lot of questions about this is, sports are done. They're just done. There will be no more sports for this academic school year. Things like cheerleader tryouts, right? I mean, everything related to sports is done. So that was kind of like his way of saying, we don't really have anything else to discuss on that. There is no way to do those things.
Right. Well, and I'm glad you kind of bring that up. I've got a graphic I'm going to put on screen, just telling kind of the basic things we're talking about how Alabama K through 12 public schools will finish their school year at home. They will be doing things like online courses, but alternate methods of instruction. And also, I thought that it was important to add in there, because we have had a lot of questions regarding the graduations, kids that have waited 12, 13 years for that moment. So this wanted to add on here that all spring sports and extracurricular activities are canceled, but if conditions do permit, that schools can hold graduation ceremonies later this summer, depending on how things shake out.
Absolutely.
So we got a lot of questions about that, and also a lot of questions about, will schools have their last day as planned? And I know that the school year will technically end not later than June 5th. That gives a lot of wiggle room. So what can you say about that last day issue?
Well, yesterday, sometimes this information is changing on an hour-by-hour basis. I think Dr. Mackey intended for school to end not later than June 5th, but I know on the call this morning there were questions about, what if I have employees who are only contracted to be employed through May 27th? And the answer was like, well, I guess your school year ends on May 27th. So I'd say stay tuned. Dr. Mackey was very focused on making sure that instruction gets delivered to students, right? That's what if we just boil it down, like, what are the 3 things we need to teach to our 3rd graders before the school year ends? He encouraged schools to really stay focused on that and to just boil it down to that. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. And I know that kind of clause of not later than can really give kids a little bit of a glimmer of hope, because as a kid, that is your world. And so that not later than June 5th doesn't mean you're going to go until June 5th. It can mean that is just the last day that you're going to go before you get summer break. So here is a good question from Roxanne on our Facebook page. She said, is it a good time to enroll our children into supplemental courses that are already available on the web? And she also had a question regarding, will school lunches continue to be available, and will those now utilize bus routes for delivery? And I know you spoke earlier about bus routes and things being delivered via bus. So do you have anything you can share on that?
Yeah, a couple of things. The question came up, right now schools are really giving a valiant effort in trying to make sure that kids have access to meals. And we've seen these all over social media. I mean, the school next door to my house is giving out meals, except during spring break. Some of them did take a break during spring break, and then we'll be back next week. The original school closures were supposed to last through April 3rd. Dr. Mackey indicated they're still waiting on guidance about meals. I mean, I can't imagine that they won't be told that they can continue to deliver meals, right? But it's, you have to realize schools, unfortunately, they're highly or fortunately, depending upon your viewpoint. Right now, it'd be nice to have more freedom, but they're highly regulated. And so federal law governs a lot of this. Federal law governs the child nutrition program, which is how these meals get delivered. And then federal law also governs special education, right? So there was a second part to that question. Help me out.
It is is it a good time to enroll our children into supplemental courses that are already available online?
What I would say as a parent of a child who is always looking for enrichment activities for my children, I think whatever you can do to encourage your children to continue to learn is helpful. A lot of parents I know started school the moment that schools were closed, right? So they were like, we are not taking a moment off. And then others were like, oh my gosh, I've got to work the next 2 days. We're not going to do school. And then some are like, hey, it's spring break and we're going to take the week off. So it's going to be, an individual decision. I think something important to note here that you and I talked about earlier, Ivana, is that there are about 4,500 kids in Alabama that attend public school virtually entirely. They virtually never go into a classroom. They might meet up with their classmates virtually and do virtual proms and other things, but that virtual school extends all the way down to kindergarten.
Wow.
So there are some experts that are already out there doing that, who I hope to talk with and maybe can entice them to come talk with you about what does this really look like? What is homeschool? In the beginning of the closures, we saw these great school schedules. At 8:00, we do this. And then 3 days later, we were like, we're not doing this anymore. This is not working.
Right.
And
it seems safe to say, and I think this is a good time for me to give my my disclaimer that I'm not a parent. I do not have a child in school, and so you got to do what's right for you and your child. I don't.
Right.
You are a parent, Trish. You have several children who have been through school, and so you are definitely more qualified to talk on that than I am. But it seems like a lot of things that parents and educators are saying when it comes to parents that are working and juggling several things and multiple children that are in school is you've got to do what works for you, and you've got to use that time element that works for you. Maybe our rigid 8 a.m. math, 9 a.m. social studies, 12 p.m. economics is maybe not going to work for a parent at home trying to work and handle their kids and also cook dinner and just have their normal life.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important. And I hope we can bring you some experts, bring some to our readers to talk about how are we really going to do this? How do we make this manageable? Because on top of all these new duties that parents are now being given, we have this anxiety about this, coronavirus thing that we're all, do I go to the grocery store sort of thing? So it's a lot coming at us at the same time. And I think that's why, one of the things that Dr. Mackey said is, for young children, reading and math, right? Reading and math like that. Maybe we can just stop there. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be up to your school. I would encourage folks to reach out to your schools and let them know the situations that you're faced with.
Right.
There could be whole schools full of people where everybody works. There could be whole schools full of people where mom or dad stays home all day. So we're so different from one community to the other.
Right. Well, and that's kind of a point that one of our viewers, almost said readers, viewers right now, Carisha, she's saying, I feel like virtual school in a normal environment should be optional, even though there are 4,500 kids in Alabama doing it. That's their choice. And that's totally true. Carisha, you're totally right. Unfortunately, at this point, it's not a choice, though, because these buildings are closed to students and to teachers. So whether things are online right now, or like Trish said earlier, whether things are being printed or delivered worksheets, things like that, these alternate methods, no matter what they may be, are what is required right now.
Right. Yeah. Because, it's interesting just polling young parents that I know, because my children are older now. But talking with young parents, there are a lot of different opinions. Some folks say, no, learning should be optional. School year should be over. Some folks say we should have already been learning 2 weeks ago. So it's highly individualized, and that's kind of, in putting it back into the 138 school districts and 4 public charter schools principals' hands. It's Dr. Mackey and state education officials have said, do what works for your community. And I mean, all of us have concerns. We have equity concerns, tremendous equity concerns, because, the kids that have all this access, well, they're going to get to keep learning. And kids that struggle with access, their learning's been seriously interrupted. So I think everyone is sensitive to that,
Right.
especially at the state level.
Right. And again, just to answer a question that I got on our Facebook page from Margaret, you might just be tuning in. We talked a minute ago about internet access for rural areas or for areas that don't have reliable internet access. We don't have a clear answer on that right now from the superintendent, from the state superintendent. We don't really, we don't have a lot of information on that, and that is something that is going to hopefully come in the next days before that April 3rd deadline of the individual superintendents giving out their plans. So stay tuned for that. We'll give it to you as soon as we get it, but we don't have a lot of information on internet access at this point. Bring us back onto some of these questions. I thought this was really interesting from the aspect of a lot of grandparents that take care of kids during the day, especially while their parents is at work. Yeah. This is from Lois on Facebook. She said, asking about when she'll get something from teachers, and said that I'm watching my grandchild and I don't have a clue how to do this. So, I would imagine that a lot of grandparents are in that situation.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I spoke with somebody early on during the closures who said that their superintendent was actually recording videos of, here's how to create an email address. Here's how to download an app. I mean, the funny thing is you still have to be online, right, to be able to pull those things off. And again, going to that sensitivity that everybody's in a different place. One of the things that Dr. Mackey was encouraging superintendents to make sure that their teachers are in contact with parents and students, right? Like, it's really going to be incumbent on those classroom teachers. We've been talking a lot about parents. I have a lot of conversations with teachers too. They're being asked to do something that many of them have not been trained to do, because it's not as simple as moving instruction online. I mean, think about our initial newsroom video conferences, when we were trying to get used to working remotely. There's a little bit of a learning curve there about how much can we do, what's reasonable to expect, what are the rules of etiquette, does the teacher talk and then say, okay, class, now raise your hand. I mean, this is new for a lot of teachers. So I'm hoping to continue to pull resources together for our readers who need some really basic lessons. I think about my mother. Now, my mother is 85 and she does not have internet at her house, right? So she would not have a clue how to do any of this.
Right. And Lois, I think that you will stick with Trish. She will get you kind of the basics on there. And I'm with you, Trish. My mom is, one time, she's going to kill me for saying this, but she deleted the Google app and she thought that she killed the internet. So it happens. And there is a generational difference there. And sure. I think that you got to give yourself some grace on that, and school systems will have to recognize that.
Absolutely. Yep.
This is another interesting question. Is there any way to hire teachers for homeschooling?
Let me think. Hire teachers for homeschooling. Okay, so what I would put it this way. I know that right now, loud noise, face-to-face instruction by school employees is prohibited, right? Dr. Mackey was clear. Do not send teachers to students' homes. This is a public health, public safety issue, number one. And so if the governor, we're under direct orders, public health, gathering in spaces, I guess every family's going to have to make their own decisions. But as far as public school employees, I would not expect a teacher to be coming to your house to do anything or to make any plans to meet that teacher.
Right.
Not for the rest of the school year.
Right. Quick shout out to Lois. She just commented thank you on our video. But I just got to tell you directly, Lois, if you are able to watch Facebook Lives, you are doing better than a lot of people. So right. You're doing good. You've got this. I just needed to let you know that. Another question that is kind of shifting a little bit more to higher ed. This one of our Facebook readers said, I have a 17-year-old who's in the process of getting his GED when everything was shut down due to coronavirus. He isn't completely enrolled yet, so how does he start that schooling?
Okay, so it depends on where you're going to get your GED, right? But if you're working through the community college system, I don't have an update I've not seen any updates, but honestly, I've been immersed in K-12, but I've not seen any updates on how to, if something has been interrupted, how will we move forward? I think colleges, they have a lot of, community colleges are all under one system. But I think there is a lot of flexibility. I would say be in touch with whoever your son was planning to take his GED through and ask, how do we move forward? We're ready. Let's go.
And this is another question kind of around the homeschooling that we talked about earlier and online. Christine on Facebook asked, they said they live in Jefferson County, and she said this may be an unfair question since we can't speculate, but are you hearing if they plan to use homeschool platforms that are already in place?
Homeschool platforms. Okay, read the last part of that question to me one more time. I want to make sure I understand the question.
Hearing if they plan to use homeschool platforms that are already in place. I've been told Jeffco, this is not me saying, this is reading.
Sure.
I've been told Jeffco has already been contracted with Edgenuity to provide learning access.
Okay, so Edgenuity is one of those platforms that you can use that provides, they've got like what they'd call a learning management system, a content management system. So they've already got these built-in lessons. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be available, and I'm sure they're going to be, they're getting a lot of phone calls right now. One thing that you want to ask, I would encourage, and this is just the question that I'm now having that you bring this up. How are you going to make sure, because even though each school, each grade has learning standards, they're not always taught in the same order. So you want to make sure, just as Dr. Mackey has instructed, that you're focusing on the things that you haven't already covered. Really important, right? You don't want to bore kids with work they've already done. And what are the things that you've got to make sure that they get through by the end of the year? So, and they have that way of tailoring. Okay, we haven't learned standard, 8.4 and 8.6. So here's the learning management system. They have that ability, but it's going to be a daunting task.
And just so we can get a few more questions in before we got to run, but I thought that this was a really interesting question that Cynthia just asked on was it Cynthia? That Cynthia just asked on our Facebook page. What about or it was Carol? I'm sorry, it was Carol. How are the high school seniors that need their transcripts to go to their colleges that they've already applied to, or maybe even been accepted to? How are they going to get those transcripts to those colleges on time?
I would imagine that in most cases, now I can't say this for sure, this is going to be one of those where I say check with your school officials, mm-hmm. right? Send an email, make a phone mm-hmm. call, and ask them how are you going to make sure those high school transcripts get there. But that's usually an electronic process and should not be interrupted. I know that one of the questions that I was getting that I forgot to bring up earlier was like, how is grading going to happen? Like, are we really going to be giving grades to kids for their work this final 9-week period? And that's going to be up to the school districts, right? That's going to be up to, they're being given a lot of latitude in how they grade K through 8. But in the credit-bearing courses, the courses that count towards graduation, Dr. Mackey has said, really, you want to make sure the kids have that content so they're ready to go to the next grade.
And I think that we can kind of wrap up on the topic. We've got a lot of different specific questions too, but I'll just throw it to you in a general form. What about special education? What about those kids that only respond really to certain teachers? Those specialized learning programs, and about those kids that get their therapy through their teachers at school. What is going to happen with those kids?
I wish I had a clear answer on that. I know I have a lot of contacts in the special education community, and that is a big question. How do you do occupational therapy online? How do you do physical therapy when you can't touch somebody? So Dr. Mackey said he is still looking to the U.S. Department of Education for guidance. The U.S. Department of Education came out and said, you can't just do nothing. Right? Like you have to do something. These are, we have the capabilities. We know how to serve kids with special needs. This is challenging, but we can do this. But we don't have any real, and in lieu of this, do that. So it's sort of like, let's put our thinking caps on. Let's get creative. Let's be innovative. How are we going to do this? But yeah, I'll tell you one thing that as an education reporter who, has a big heart for schools and for kids and for teachers and for parents, I think people really realize how important schools are to our community, how they're not just places we send our kids to learn, that a lot goes on in the space of school, social, emotional learning. I've been seeing teachers say, I didn't get to teach my kids how to tie their tie for graduation. And, these kinds of things that teachers do that they don't get any recognition for, but these relationships that they form with our children that are really key to moving them forward. I think we're all getting a better appreciation for what our schools really mean to our communities. But I don't have a good answer on special education. I can promise you that I am tracking that down. That is something that it's not going to go away. I'm going to get some guidance on that to share with readers.
So for all the people who have commented about that will be coming. Information about internet access will be coming. A couple of people like Cynthia just joining, talking about seniors. That is something that the state superintendent said maybe later this summer, depending on how all of this shakes out. There could be some graduation ceremonies planned. You're just going to have it's a hurry up and wait situation. A lot of this is going to be coming out in the days and weeks ahead. Just to recap, your independent schools will come up with plans by April the 3rd. And then that will be released to parents, and then we will see what each school system is doing. There is not just one plan for the state. So we really appreciate you, Trish, coming on answering our questions. For those of you who we didn't get to answer questions, I apologize, but Trish will get on it, and we will get all of those to you here and on AL.com. And we thank you for watching and for hanging out with us this week, and we hope you all have a good weekend.